Great. I think we can begin now. Uh, Before we start, I just want to let you all know that this session is being recorded. And so if you are comfortable in being in the recording of the workshop, you can keep your videos on. And when we move to the Q&A, you can raise your hand and ask your questions directly to the speaker. If you are not comfortable in being in the recording of the session, then you can keep your videos off. And when we move to the Q&A, you can put your questions in chat or you can send it to us as a DM and we will take it up anonymously. Um, with that, we can, I think, begin the session. Welcome everyone to today's workshop on the Fulbright-Nehru Master's Scholarship. Very quickly, today this is what we're going to be discussing. I will introduce you to Project EduAccess and your panelists for today and hand it over to them, who will then give you an overview of the scholarship, give you a sense of the timeline, eligibility, what the application process is, what are the application documents. There is an interview component in this scholarship, so they'll take you over how to prepare for the interview and then give you some general tips, after which we will move to the Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can put that in chat, but we will take all of the questions after the presentation is over. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are Project EduAccess. We believe that access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunities is a privilege that most people from marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. And we try to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing some of these barriers for marginalized communities in the global south. And we hope to achieve this by providing mentorship, engaging in advocacy, and running capacity building workshops, both online and in person. And today's workshop is a part of our series of online workshops on scholarship opportunities to study abroad. So to do that, we have two wonderful panelists. We have with us Rupa, who did an LLM at Harvard University on the Fulbright-Nehru Master's Scholarship in 2017-2018, and is now doing a DPhil in law, which is a PhD at University of Oxford. We have with us Taha, who you might be familiar with as Taha was with us even for our workshop on Master's Scholarship for US and Canada. Taha did their master's in design historic preservation from University of Pennsylvania and was a Fulbright scholar for 2022-2023. Um, so thank you so much, Rupa and Taha, for joining us today and for speaking to everybody about your experience and telling them about the Fulbright Scholarship. Thank you so much, and I will now hand it over to Rupa.
Thanks, Misbah, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone joining us from India. So today, the way Taha and we thought we'll structure it is we'll quickly go through the process and the documents you'd need and the application portal, and we will spend more time on things like personal statements, study objectives, and our general tips for approaching the whole process. So the Fulbright Foreign Student Program, it's a wide network and it has multiple scholarships, grants, programs, of which the Master's Scholarship is an important part. And it's a huge community, and I can't stress how wonderful the community is, and it's a great network of people working on a bunch of different things. So the Fulbright-Nehru Master's Scholarship specifically, that'll come on the next slide if we can move. So, and before I start, for those of you thinking of applying this year, I want to stress that the application deadline is 15th of May. So make sure that you get onto the portal as soon as possible. So the way it works is that the scholarship is awarded for up to 2 years to pursue a master's program in any US university. And it is awarded in specific subject areas. So that's like the most important thing to check off first is the program that you are considering within the subject area that Fulbright offers scholarships in. So this is the list. And so you can find that on the website. And also, there are a few eligibility criteria. So before you think about it, just read it really carefully and then make sure you check all of this off. We'll come to the details on the actual application portal, but let me run you through the eligibility criteria in the next slide. So like I said, yes, thank you. So this is given in these subject areas, and the good thing is it covers everything. It's so early in the process, right? So if you're thinking about the next academic year, you already know if you got the Fulbright scholarship, you are set and you're well positioned to do the actual application. So the scholarship covers a J1, so study visa, and you get round trip travel. And if you need to take any tests like the GRE, which I think, except for the legal studies, I assume most other programs would require that. So Fulbright funds you in taking that test. Language tests like the TOEFL also is funded by Fulbright. You get health cover. So it's a great scholarship because then you're not stressed about logistics or funding, etc. And once you get the scholarship, Fulbright helps you in going through the actual application process. You'll get an advisor who will support you through the process. But one thing to note that there is a cap on the funding. So the year I went, I think it was 80,000 US dollars. I'm not sure that has changed. That was 1718. So, but they will help you sort of pick a program that will come within that limit. So you might be looking at getting some sort of additional funding from the universities, and Fulbright will advise you on that. And even despite that, if there is a bit of a shortfall, you expect it to cover it. But that's often not very significant, and they do give you a lot of advice in choosing a university and program which is going to give you supplemental funding. And usually for 1 year programs, in my experience, it's not I think financially it's quite manageable. But for 2 year programs, there might be a bit of a shortfall, but the Fulbright agency will help you work through that. And if we move to the next slide, we can talk a bit about the timeline. And the most important thing right now is that the application deadline's in a few weeks, which is May 15. And you'll know the results by early August. You'll have an interview, and they're really quick about it. So you'll know if you get the scholarship or not quite soon after the interview in August. And then they advise you to schedule and take the TOEFL GRE test if needed. So if you need the GRE, I would suggest keep preparing for it now onwards. You'll need it in any case if you're going to apply for a US program, irrespective of the Fulbright. And then October onwards, the fall, is when the application cycles at the university begins, and then they sort of help you through that, and you will know of the outcome of the university applications, sort of think March, April next year. And then there are all the orientations and before the program begins. And now we'll talk a bit about eligibility. That's something, again, to be mindful of. So the bare minimum, of course, they have a threshold of 55% marks. And they say, Fulbright stresses that you need the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, which is a 4 years degree. So if you've done a degree in a bachelor's degree in India, which is 3 years, you should have, in addition to that, completed a master's degree or a full-time graduate diploma from a recognized Indian institution. And this is if the bachelor's degree is less than 4 years. And again, most importantly, the scholarship is for people who've had some amount of work experience already. So you need to have a minimum of 3 years full time paid professional work experience. And it should be in relevant to the field that you want to do your master's in. So that's something to ensure, because you will have to prove that you have work experience. You'll have to submit documentation for, and internships and things like that don't count. So this has to be a proper full-time paid job. And again, part of the focus of the scholarship is in encouraging people who are committed to community service, who have shown some amount of leadership and have a lot of leadership potential. So the eligibility says that you should be able to demonstrate some leadership, some community service, but don't be intimidated by that. That's not like, you need to have held like a very high post somewhere. It's just like what kind of initiatives you've been taking. Have you been involved in any organizations? Has the work you've done contributed in some way to the community? Have you shown leadership within your team? Things like that. So it's not a very high threshold, but it's important to highlight that in your application. And because you shouldn't have already had a degree from the US or be currently enrolled in a US program. And then we move on. So, yeah, this is just something to be really mindful of, because you will need documentation for some of this. And hopefully you've all looked at the portal, but this is a screenshot of what that looks like. You need to register in the portal to begin the application. Really, and they have a very helpful applicant instruction sheet, which gives you detailed step-by-step advice on filling out the form. So make sure you download that, go through that really carefully, think about all the documentation you need to have in place, and this would be very helpful. It's quite self-explanatory, the applicant instructions. Ms. Birkin, we move on. So now I'm gonna pause for a bit, and I'll let Taha step in and walk us through the whole application process, and we'll come back to our general tips for the applications.
Thank you so much, Rupa, for letting me participate as well. Thank you so much, Misbah, for introducing both of us. And congratulations to everyone today in the interview, because you people are thinking of going on a Fulbright, which is huge. If you're already thinking, it definitely means you have a potential, which means we should all celebrate it. Misbah, if you could please go back one slide so I can probably pick up the thread from here. So yeah, as Rupa very well introduced, Fulbright Scholarship, like most of the scholarships, it is based on a lot of factors. You need a couple of things for the for winning for a winning scholarship. Just the basics of it, as Rupa very well said. On the top right of the screen, you have what is the most important thing for your scholarship application. You have 4 links there. I would say 3 of them are extremely important. Do not miss bullet number 2. I want to stress it. It says FN Masters Applicant Instructions. So if you simply click on it, what you will see is a screenshot, which is in the top left, somewhere in the middle of the screen. It will open up this instructions sheet. I strongly advise take a printout of it, and whatever we are going to speak in the next 10 to 15 minutes, it's already written there in a lot more thorough detail. So this could be your reference document before you think of anything else. For people who have already started their applications, I'm very sure they've already gotten a chance to look at it. So yeah, coming back to how to apply screenshot, the top left one, The first step would be obviously clicking on the link, as simple as that, and it will take you to a portal. It will direct you to a portal, somewhat looking like the bottom left on your screen. If you are an applicant that has applied last year, you will have to log in with your old credentials. If you're a new applicant, please create a new account. It will ask you for an email, basic details. Once you do it, what you will see on the screen is a home page. And this vertical screenshot that you see on the screen is basically all the things that you will need to be filing in for your successful Fulbright application. It will have questions about your background, your contact information, your academic and professional credentials, so on and so forth. If you could, Ms. Fa, if you could kindly move on to the next slide. So in this workshop, we are specifically targeting only professional and academic credentials because uh, most of the remaining things are, of course, you'll file that in. So once you go through the application portal, the most important thing that you will be asked to submit is a detailed curriculum vitae, a CV. A CV essentially would, of course, would mean not just a track of your academic, credentials, your educational background, not just that, but also how has that education translated into some or most of your professional experience, whether it is remote, whether it's on site, whatever you have done basically following your education. And not just what you have done, but also has that work been recognized? The awards, the fellowships, the research that you may have done, any publications that may be there to your credit. It's important to understand the difference between resume and a CV. A CV is basically a more thorough, comprehensive introduction of your candidature, which means it can be pretty long, unlike a resume, which can be just one page. So a CV is the most important document that you will be asked. Then on the screen, as you see, you will be asked about your academic background, in which you will put in your educational qualifications, your scores and all of that. You will also be asked to submit your professional experience, often in the chronological order, which means the most recent work comes first, and then you basically go back, chronologically speaking. On the right side of the screen is one of the most important things that you will be asked. It says awards and recognition, which basically means any scholarships, any fellowships that you may have received until date, any academic honors and prizes that you may have won. Now, one of the most important thing that you need to remember here is sometimes a candidate have a lot of small regional awards at a school level, at a high school level. Well, if you don't have anything else, probably consider mentioning them. But for example, if you have considerably higher scholarships, let's say a district level scholarship, a district level award, or a state level award, many of you might even have national or international awards. So in those cases, I would say if you are substantiating your application with an international award or a national or a regional award, then probably you don't need to speak about all the mini smaller awards because a national award automatically validates that you must have won a lot of small mini awards. So remember, it's not about the quantity of these academic honors and fellowships and prizes. It's also about how important they were. When you submit them as a list, supposing you have them, it's interesting to remember to mention, was it a district level, a mohalla level, a state level, national level, international level? That will help explain the context. So on the bottom right of the screen, you see published books, articles, or themes, any thesis that you may have published. Please don't get scared. You're not really expected to have publications as when you apply, but in case you have, please don't refrain from mentioning them. it would be amazing if you have. Many times you have your blogs, many times you have your newspaper contributions. I would say blogs probably they do not count as publications, but if you are, let's say, a regular columnist at a newspaper or something, you may find a way to maybe indirectly mention that. If you could go to the next slide, please, Misbah. um, Thank you. And it's important to remember that Fulbright expects you to be a leader, not just in terms of the work experience that you have, but also in terms of, are you a teacher fundamentally? So it has a column for a teaching experience. It may mean a visiting faculty position at some college, university. It may mean teaching diploma students at a polytechnic level. It may mean, let's say, an assistant professor or even a bigger academic position in your professional career. Let's suppose you don't have a teaching experience. Whether or not you want to mention your informal teaching experience as a part of your application will be your decision. Let's say you have done Mohalla classes and there is no way we can validate it, right? There is no way anyone is going to issue you a certificate for that. Do you want to mention that and own that experience is your decision. Ideally, a formal experience is expected, but they are pretty flexible. You need to demonstrate that you are a teacher. Find a way if you can do that, as long as it's formal, preferably formal education. Similarly, there's a column for researchers. You don't need to have a published research, but when you use the term research, it's important to remember the academic interpretation of the word research. Researchers can be anything. You can just go anywhere and question people, but then was it a part of an academic project? That is what you must remember as a part of it. Again, you're not expected to have it, but if you do, it's amazing. If you go to the bottom left, it's membership and licensing in professional organizations. You don't need to have formal memberships all the time. Even if you're affiliated to some organizations that do not have formal memberships, please do not shy away from mentioning. Is it your regional organizations, your regional press clubs, your regional hospitals with whom you have been working, collaborating? Do not shy away from mentioning, as long as you're affiliated and have done some sort of collaborative work. On the right side of the screen, you see a thorough study plan. A study plan essentially means, why do you want to study? It's just as basic as that. And what do you want to study and how do you want to study? These why, what, and how are the three questions that they will ask you. If you see on the screen, it says, please describe the area of the field in which you plan to specialize in the United States. It's important to remember this prompt talks about the area. It does not talk about what you have done. It does not talk about what you want to do. It talks about largely a problem of the field that you're interested in. On the bottom right is your future plans, which basically means you graduate from a US college. What do you want to do after it? Ideally, you should know, at least theoretically, what is it that you want to do immediately for 2 years after the program, for 5 years, and probably a long-term career plan for 10 years. You don't need to adhere to it. There's always room for uncertainty, but at least the basic draft of how are you envisioning yourself as a candidate. Ms. If you could please go to the next slide. Yeah, very, very important slide. So it says on the top left, it says study and research objectives. We advise all the time to the prospective applicants, you need to have one clear statement, what is the problem? Why are you studying? You are studying to solve problem A, okay? Solving problem A is your main study objective. And how do you want to solve that problem A? It can happen stepwise, it can happen phase-wise. For example, you say, I want to solve problem A by undertaking 3 interconnected steps. My first step during the US college would be my first study sub-objective. And once I do first study sub-objective, it will lead me to the second study objective. The second study objective will hopefully contribute to my research in the third and final study objective. Together as a package, They will help me solve the main problem statement A that I have identified in the previous slide where you explain the area of the study that you want to pursue. So study objective essentially should be structured. Fundamentally, it's the formal study objectives, but please feel free to include some of the informal learnings also. Remember, Fulbright is a cultural exchange program. It's about cultural ambassadorship, which means one of the informal study or research objectives could also be to benefit from the informal settings and the culture at large. Then you have a personal statement, which I'm sure most of the candidates are aware about. We will go into more detail about what is a personal statement, but ideally it's a short, concise narrative of who you are and why have you done whatever you have done. It's not, I repeat with insistence, it's not an explanation of your CV. Okay, it's not an explanation of I have done A, B, C. It's about why did I do A, B, C, and also what did A, B, C did back to me in the process? How did that work change me as a person to a point that today I want to apply for this higher studies program? On the bottom left of the screen, you have a writing sample. I'm sure most of you are very well aware of that. It's essentially a piece of academic writing. Please do not hesitate to have a Grammarly check, do not hesitate to get your writing sample edited and get it checked for any potential overflow of adjectives and adverbs and all the flashy poetic language that we have a tendency as beginners to write. Get your writing sample free of all of that. Essentially, it is an academic writing. If you're not introduced to the concept of academic referencing, please take help from your professors and have it a reference proper academic sample. On the top, on the right side of the screen, you simply have university preferences, where Fulbright expects you to have 3 to 4 universities and the course programs that you want to apply for. And you will have, I think, 200 words, if I remember correctly, 200 words to explain why this particular course. Now, it's important to remember that these 4 university choices and course programs will obviously, they will not be a replica programs, okay? You won't say, I'm applying for Masters in Gender Studies at University A, Masters in Gender Studies at University B. University B will have a slightly different variation of your program. So it's important to write your personal statement and your study objective as an overarching theme that probably encapsulates all different 4 variations of the universities that you want to apply for. The personal statement and study objective should be an umbrella, if you will, an umbrella way of saying, this is what I want to study. And then when you dive into further 4 courses of your universities, you will cite more specific reasons as to why these programs contribute to the solution of the problem statement A that you have identified earlier. If you could please go, Ms. Pat, to the next slide. Thank you. So all of the previous 2-3 slides basically summarizes into these 13 things. The application documents that you need, quick flashback. You need a CV, study or research objective. You need personal statement, writing sample for people applying for design programs, a portfolio for sure, and then of course your reference letters and all the other supporting documentation. Thank you, Misbah. If you could please move forward. Lovely. So coming very briefly, and we are happy to respond to you in detail about these, but very briefly, what is a statement of purpose? It is essentially a 500 to 700 words of a personal narrative, as I earlier mentioned. It basically is a statement describing how have you achieved your current goals? How did you reach wherever you have reached, okay? Point number 2 on the screen is extremely important. It is not a mere listing of facts, as I stressed earlier. It's not an explanation of your CV. Yes, it does include your education. Yes, it does include your practical experience, your interest and career plans. But as you describe all these four things, you have to understand to express the significant factors that have led to all these four different categories is extremely important. You want to be speaking about who you are as a person. It's if you read the point 9, that brilliantly, I think, summarizes the 8 preceding points. A personal statement is essentially not what you have done. It's about why have you done whatever you have done, and what has your journey or work done to you in return. As you prepare a statement of purpose, please do not mention any specific universities. Please do not mention any specific programs, because that will contradict to your 4 different university choices that you're going to be mentioning. And it's important to also reflect upon your previous experience, work experience that you have completed in the field, and what are the essential insights that you have gained during all this process. If you could, Ms. Ba, kindly go to the next slide. So study objectives, I think I already briefed you about it. It has to be a clear and detailed description of your study objectives. In extremely simple words, it's simply a reason why do you want to pursue it, and how will the program basically help you solve whatever problems that you are identifying. The two most important things on this slide that I want to reiterate are points 7 and 8, sorry. Point 7, again, I repeat, have a main objective and then divide your main objective in 2 or 3 sub-objectives and prepare a narrative in a very methodological way, if you will. And then point 8, please remember your study objectives is definitely related. It has to be a commentary on your personal statement, but it is distinct from your personal statement, okay? While personal statement is essentially a human narrative of what you have done and why you have done, a study objective is more written from the perspective of a scientist. Whatever insights I gained as a human or whatever, this is what I want to be doing with them on ground. Um, and yeah, it has to be super methodological. If you could proceed to the next slide, and lovely. And if Rupa is still up for it, Rupa, would you like to speak a bit about interviews and furthermore?
Thanks, Taha. That was
Thank
super
you.
clear and helpful, I'm sure. So I'll take off from where Taha left. And so once you've gone through the application process and you're shortlisted, you will be invited to an interview in Delhi. When I did it, it was all in person. I'm not sure now with everything whether there's an option for a hybrid mode. But I think they reimburse you for your travel to Delhi. So there's a panel. It comprises of people from the Fulbright agency, which is USIF in India. Um, there's also a representative from the HRD ministry, I believe, because this is part funded by the US government and part funded by the Indian government. And then you will have subject experts. So, whichever program you are applying for, there will be someone who is an expert from that field. And the subject expert is usually the person who's going to be asking you very field and subject specific questions. Do not be alarmed. It's not about, they're not trying to test your knowledge of the subject, but to sort of try to understand what you're trying to do in the program, how that fits into what you've done, what you want to do, which is essentially what you're trying to present in your study objective, right? And depending on your work experience, you might be curious about some aspects of it, and you might be asked to speak about some project you were involved in or some work you've done, something you've published. So be thorough with your application and read every bit. And this is a very helpful tip from Taha about color coding. So the information that you really want to highlight, you want to make sure that the panelists don't miss that, and you think it's your strength, you might want to color code it as green and try to really bring that up. Things you might want to say, and then things you really, you don't want to get into because it's not it's something that makes you feel shaky, but don't overthink it. And every bit in that application is relevant, and it's probably good, which is why you've been invited to interview. So it's a very friendly process. There's no need to be defensive or anxious about everything. It's very conversational in tone. So just think of it as an opportunity to speak about what you've done, what you want to do with a group of people who have some experience in your field, and approach it as a good conversation. And, be familiar with everything you've written on your CV, be prepared to speak in detail about some projects. Maybe you did that a long while ago, so refresh your memory. Um, Keep your answers concise, but not too brief. You don't want to make the interviewer's life hard. Where you give like monosyllabic or like one line answers, and then they have to struggle to keep up a conversation. And that's the thing with a conversation, right? It has to be a back and forth. You want to say enough that you convey your message, and it leaves room for the other person to it sparks some curiosity, it leaves room for them to ask more questions. But you don't want it to be so long that they don't really get to ask you everything that they wanted you to ask, or you don't get a chance to highlight different parts of your um, profile portfolio because you've spent too much time on just a couple of things. And yes, be prepared to talk about the main argument, key message in your publications, the interesting highlights of your work experience, and if you have any ongoing research, be prepared to explain what it is, what the implications are. And there's no fixed template, and I think that's where the individuality comes in, right? You just be yourself. I know that sounds very cliched, but I think that's the most important thing in the interview. Your everything you've done on paper is there in your application. They know where you studied, they know what scholarships, awards you've received, what work you've done. But who are you as a person? What drives you? What you bring to the table in terms of personality, how you are with people. The interview is where you get an opportunity to show that. So try and just be yourself. Miss, can we please move to the next slide? So these are some questions you could expect. You might be asked to introduce yourself, what your field of study is, why you chose. Some of it you would have sort of covered in your study objective and personal statement, right? Why you want to do this, why Fulbright, and that's something to think about. Why Fulbright? Because it's a great community, and it's not just that you will get to go study in a university, right? But also you'll be part of this amazing network of individuals doing like a lot of very interesting things. So that's something to really foreground. You need to think about how your study will contribute to your field and generally, the area you're working on. Um, about US culture. I mean, they're not trying to gauge what you know about US culture, but generally, are you familiar? Do you have an interest? Why USA? Both for of course, your academic pursuits, but you're also going to be spending important part of your life there, right? A year. So why the US? Why do you want to? And a master's is this very, hopefully it'll be a transformative experience. So why you've chosen to do that in the US. And just practice pitching your what you want to do, what you've done, your research. in a way that will be accessible to someone who is not an expert in your subject. The subject expert already understands what you're doing, when you're explaining in your study objectives, but it's important that everyone's on board. So cut down on the jargon and try to practice being clear in very non-technical terms. And then some general interview questions, right? Failures, leadership situations. What did you learn? How have you reflected on both positive and negative experiences and how you're taking it forward? And Ms. Bell, we can move to the next slide, please. Um, this I'm not going to spend too much time on. There will be there's a whole process once you're done with the interview and once you're offered the scholarship. You get a lot of, they're very communicative and you get a lot of help in navigating each bit of the process. So I wouldn't worry about it. So they sort of help you book the tests and they pay to take the tests. And then you will be there will be an advisor who will help you from then on with the whole application process to the UK university. So there'd be a discussion with you to select the universities, the courses, and they will apply on your behalf. And I think that's part of the reason why they tell you not to specify which university you want to do the courses in both the study objectives and the personal statement. So if you see in the instructions, that's there. So make sure you're speaking about programs in general and not universities in particular. And you will have the opportunity to tweak your personal statement and study objective in consultation with the advisor. And then you can think about tailoring it to your specific program and the university you're aiming for. And they'll come up with a submission plan where, the deadlines for when you are expected to, if there are any changes in the documents you've already given, the study objective, the personal statement, you have to do it within a certain deadline so they can meet the university application deadline. But this is something we're all available to speak about at a later stage. But now we'll turn the focus back onto the actual application process. So just quickly, we'll go through some general tips. Like I said, read the instructions carefully. And as with all applications, you need to give enough time for your referees to write their references, get it uploaded on time. So make sure you contact them well in advance. Taha, explained in great detail what your study objective and personal statement should contain. But in general, I think it's good practice to demonstrate a strong narrative arc with you want to make it very clear how your past study and work experience align with what you're trying to do, the program that you want to undertake, and how that masters will help in your future plans. And I know it's a bit confusing because it does overlap in some ways, but like Taha said, the study objective is more academic. It's specifically about the field, the program, what you've studied, what you worked on, the details of it, and then what you're going to study and that how that will add to your knowledge, your skill sets, and how you're going to take that and apply it to research or work. And a personal statement is where you get to show a little more about your motivations. Yes, you're studying this and you worked in this, but what about why did you choose to do that? What drives you? What are the experiences you've had both personally and professionally that chose you that made you choose this path and why, what motivates you? And what do you want to do? You want to do something for out of academic and professional interest, but the driving force behind it, what is the broader objective that you want to achieve once you come back? And a general tip I find useful is a star method, where when you're speaking or writing about when you're asked to demonstrate, for example, talk to us about a situation where you demonstrated leadership skills, for instance. So a good way to organize your thoughts is to describe briefly the situation you are faced with. What was the task that you had to undertake? What action you took to try, to make that task successful, and what was the result? Did it work? And so that's a good way to organize your thoughts. And I think it's also important to demonstrate that you have a clear plan for what you will do after you return. Part of the condition of the J1 visa is that you come back, right? And so what do you have? Like, it's not necessary that you know exactly which organization you'll be working for, because many of you, you might be resigning from your current jobs to undertake the program. And in that case, the portal says that you don't need the employer's endorsement, right? So you have to tell them that you plan on resigning to take the master's up. But if not, if you're going to continue in the job and you come back, you need to make sure you get the employer's endorsement in. And yes, so the cultural exchange and exposure is an important part of the Fulbright scholarship, and it's a part of what makes this program quite unique in that sense. And so I, I would highlight that. And I'm going to turn over to Taha again for his thoughts and tips, and we can open up for Q&A after that.
Thank you, Rupa, for the wonderful tips. I guess you covered a lot of them, but I also said in my previous session, some of the tips that you now see on the screen are extremely important, and allow me to quickly go through them. First and foremost, I always insist, please ask. There is no stupid question, okay? You don't have to be thinking about, oh, is this question legit or not? Just ask. Asking does not do any harm to you. Email them. They're getting paid to answer for your emails, right? They're getting paid to help you win the scholarship application. They're not your enemies. They want to help you. So email, ask, uh, ask whosoever you can. That's first and foremost. As you see on the screen, keeping a separate written or a computer notebook is always fantastic. It needs to be informing you things that you know and things that you don't. Things that you know will eventually become your strengths, and things that you don't know are the potential questions that you will eventually ask. And flowcharts are fun. Have plans. For example, if A happens, then what? If B happens, then what? For example, you say if University A happens, then what is my next step? If it doesn't happen, what is my backup plan? Have backup plans ready all the time. When you apply to these universities, in this case on the screen, it's 6-3-1 rule, which means 6 low-ranked universities, 3 medium-tier, and 1 your dream university. Assuming that Fulbright officially asks for around 4 universities, please don't target only Ivy Leagues. I understand they're flashy, they're elite, yes, but it's not necessary that they're good, Find good universities with a very practical approach. Look at the acceptances rates. Look at what do they want, or what are they looking for. It's not about how great a candidate you are. It's about, are you required in the place that they offer? Universities, let's say, declining you offers is not an explanation of your candidature. It simply means you're not you're not ready to spend time with each other. So when you apply, make 4 university choices. Probably just target, if you want to target Harvard, just target Harvard as one. Target any other Ivy League as one, but then keep the remaining 3 as your backup practical options that will gain you acceptances. Please remember, Fulbright won't be able to help you if you do not secure offers. As much as support they provide you in shortlisting, negotiating with these universities, they are not responsible to win your offers. It's also important to remember with Fulbright Commission uh, arguing for your candidature to these universities, 90% of times candidates get in. but it's not 100% guarantee that you will. And supposing that you filed poorly researched applications and you target only IVs, for example, and you don't get the offer, I'm not exactly sure what happens to your $80,000. So take caution. This also means proper planning and timely execution, as Rupa already hinted at. There's always a pre-application stage, which is now uh, during selection and then after admission. So these are three different categories that you should investigate separately. Please also remember that what I call your own call center have list of all the contacts, uh, have all the emails that you want to have as a list of people you want to reach out to. And then one very important tip, I almost insist every time, please watch out for your emotional and mental health. It is 50% important in the entire application process, if not 60%. It's extremely important. Do not dig in, do not pour in 12 hours every single day. That's not sustainable. Probably 8 hours and then relax and kill your time. Just give yourself some breathers. That may look like wastage of time, but please waste it. It's worth it. And yeah, I mean, reach out to alumni, reach out to people from your programs, from Fulbright-Nehru Commission, reach out to people and inquire about your courses as much as about the scholarship ways. Have a practical timeline for your own self. If we can go to probably the last slide. Thank you. Yes, the first point that you see on the screen is extremely important. As you write your SOPs, your essays, or even make your graphic portfolios, please remember, I repeat, to be difficult is super, super easy. But to be simple, lucid, uh, with clarity, brevity, those are extremely difficult stations to achieve. Do not put in more than, let's say, two ideas in every single sentence. Uh, do what we call a thought analysis. When you write your essays, read one sentence separately, examine what are the key ideas that sentence says. If you feel at any point the sentence says more than two key ideas, it's time to stop. It's time to break the sentence into two, divide it into two equal sentences, okay? That will help you write a clearly written essay. Then please also remember, less is more. You don't want to come across as someone who say, hey, I have done everything in the world and I am your best possible candidate. Please remember, it's not always about what you have done. Sometimes, art is also about what have you not done. It's about the blank spaces you leave in between. So when you write your essays, it's interesting to analyze what should I leave unsaid rather than saying everything aloud. Because if you have done everything, why are you applying to the master's program in the first place? They can question you back in the interview. Well, you seems to have worked a lot, and we feel you can teach master's students. So why do you want to apply? So you don't want to come across as a candidate who has 200% of work already to the credit. You want to say, I have 90%, and then explain the 10% subtraction, the 10% blank space that your master's program will fill. Then the fourth point that you see on the screen, extremely important. Let's say you have secured only 55% marks in your undergrad, It is a bare minimum qualification, but please don't expect them not to question it. If you already have a master's to your credit and this is your second master's and your master's score is, let's say, again, 58%, own it in your essays, be explicit about it. Don't make excuses about it. Whatever the reason was, the reason can be as direct as I was not serious about my studies. Uh, that will make you come across as a candidate who is responsible and sort of owns what he has done. Or if there are other reasons that contributed to less scores, please own them. And yes, let your application essays breathe for a while. You read an essay, you write an essay today. Um, please don't uh, please don't go through the essay tomorrow again. If you write it today, you write prompt number 1 today, please take rest. Stay away from it. Keep it in another room. Keep it inside the locker. Don't look at it. Give yourself some breathers, because you will get saturated. And with deadline just 20-25 days away, if you get saturated, you will not be able to identify mistakes. So let it breathe. And the simple rule, you craft, you write, please proofread, then edit, and go on editing as much as you have to. If you want people to review your essays, please don't send them one day before deadline. Give enough space for editing. And yeah, and last thing, I mean, enjoy. I mean, there are many people in these universities who honestly, who just got in and who were not extremely confident. They had done a lot of work, but if you are one among those candidates who are slightly unsure, don't worry about it. You will get it, hopefully, and just enjoy the process, and wish you a great learning ahead. I think that is what we had, Misbah. Oh yeah, that's what we had. So questions, please, and I guess we have answered most of the questions. Thank you, Misbah and Rupa, for waiting so patiently. Yeah.
No, thank you, Taha, and thank you, Rupa, so much for such a comprehensive presentation. This was, I'm sure, very helpful, as you can tell from the messages that have come in chat. So I see that a lot of the questions that have come in chat have been answered by Taha and Rupa. So thank you so much for doing that. That does save us quite a bit of time. If anyone has any pending questions or follow-up questions from what they put in chat, or any other clarifications, please feel free to raise your hand and ask your question, or you can put your question in chat. We'll maybe, I mean, the session was supposed to be an hour, but we'll take another 10-15 minutes to maybe take questions, and then we can go ahead. Great. So we have 3 hands up. Ujjwala, I think you had started asking. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Misbah, for this session. Thank you, Taha. Thank you, Rupa, for a wonderful, informative session. I just wanted to make sure how can I portray my work experience as an entrepreneur? Because 4 years back, I started my own social enterprise, and I've been working throughout. And in the middle of the journey, I also joined a climate tech. So right now, I'm currently working kind of, on both the projects. So of course, I want to come back to the climate tech once if at all, I receive the Fulbright after my master's. So I'll have to get the employer's endorsement letter. But I just wanted to make sure, how can I portray my entrepreneurial journey? Like, how do I how do I make sure that they believe that I've done this?
Taha, did you have some thoughts on that? Or?
Unless did you have someone specifically who did you want to ask this question, Ujjwala?
It's a very generic question. I mean, anybody.
I'm not quite sure. To be honest, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. If you're worried about how to convince them of your entrepreneurial journey, if that is the question,
yeah,
there are different ways to say it. One way, I'm not into business, but as I see it, one way of looking at it is by the amount of funding that you may have received, like the investments in your business, maybe the investments that you did,
okay.
the turnover of the company that you sort of got, the number of people that you employed, if it's a social enterprise, is there any way that you can think of? I don't know the details. I'm just giving a broad stroke answers. But is there any way in which the social impact, if you will, can be measured? How can that social impact be measured? How many people did you help? And
okay.
if you call it a social enterprise, how do you understand it as a social enterprise? And
Mm.
there there are always quantitative ways of producing an evidence of your work,
Mhm.
but not all the work can be
Correct.
quantified,
So I'm
so
not obliged to provide any proof of my entrepreneurial journey. Is that what you mean?
well, I don't know how to answer that again. You're
Mhm.
not expected to convince them. If you have done, you have done it. If
All
you have
right.
not done, you have not done it,
But no
they're not
documents,
going to
right?
doubt. I don't think so. I don't think so. Rupa can add to that, but I don't think so. Any documents are required.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely understand, but if this is for the eligibility bit, is that the eligibility you're going to show for full-time paid 3 years work experience?
Yes, at
In
least
that,
for 2 years, yes.
in that sense, you will need documentation. So, are you self-employed? You would have incorporated your organization.
Yes. I have an MSME registration with me.
Perfect. So I think that should be, I assume it would be enough evidence, but it's always, if you have doubts, you can write to them. They're super responsive and friendly. And I'm sure they'll be able to clarify. But my hunch is that that documentation, which shows that it's your organization, you were involved, should be sufficient. And like Taha said, it's always good to sort of highlight your journey. Both you can use that in your personal statement for what motivates you, what you're contributing, and in your study objective, like more the details of what was the specific problem that your organization is addressing and what programs and then what is the impact. So I think
Okay.
I hope that answers the question. And I think related to that, I'll take up Ishita's question on volunteer work. You can put a section on volunteer work on your CV. And if that has been a big part of your journey as who you are and what motivates you, I think the personal statement is a good place to sort of add all the volunteer work that you've done. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Rupa. Thanks, Taha.
Great. Shivani, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful session. It was great, and I mean everything is very clear. But I just had a few couple of questions. Number one was regarding the employees endorsement plan. I've been working with a research organization, and I intend to come back and work in research. I am not sure if I'm going to work with the same organization or I'll be like changing my work or something. So how important it is to have the employees endorsement plan in that sense. My other question was related to the universities. I had some confusion regarding when can we consider to actually start applying for the universities, and like uh, yeah, I just wanted to know in timeline way, I mean how important it is and when should we start, and yes, about the employees endorsement plan. Those were my two questions. Thank you so much.
Okay. Shreya, thanks for your question. So about the employer's endorsement, it's only important if you're saying your plan is to come back to the job. In that case, you do need the endorsement. And if not, then you will have to make sure you mention in the applicant annexure why you are not, the reason you're not attaching the employer's endorsement. You can say that, it's because you plan on resigning your job to take up the master's program. And that should be fine. And I think they clarify that in the applicant instructions. And second question about the timeline in general for 25-26 academic year, I believe the applications open sometime in fall 24, which is like September onwards. So keep an eye on the university's websites. And if you're speaking specifically about through the Fulbright process,
Yeah.
then once you're awarded the scholarship, which you will know in August, they'll immediately get in touch with you and create a submission plan. So you don't have to worry about that. They will make sure to meet the application deadlines and they will tell you by when you need to give them any documents. So there will be an advisor who will handle you through the process. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, thank you so much. That answers my question. Also, I had one more question regarding the submission.
Take some other questions and then come back to you just so that everyone has a chance to.
Yeah, that works. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Shivani. Amina?
Hi. Hello.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
my
we can hear you,
question
Amina.
is okay. So my question is, as now I have an offer letter, but I have to confirm whether I am accepting the offer or not by May 3rd. I have asked them for extension because I like the scholarship will the outcome I'll get to know only by few months. So if but as US scholarships are very competitive and the chances to get are like very limited, I was wondering, so should I go, like it's just for a suggestion, like I have no experience working in US or living experience, so I just wanted a suggestion whether is it if I solely depend on loan now, or should I wait for the scholarship, because I know it's a personal decision, but can you give some suggestions? Like I got the offer letter from Harvard Medical School for 2-year course in global health delivery, and from the alumni when I talked, if I get a job sooner, like I can pay back the loan little, oh, like within 3 to 5 years, but still, should I wait for scholarships and defer for 1 more year, or should I go with the loan? I was
Hmm.
just wanted to ask.
Yeah. Amina, thank you for bringing that up. And you rightly said it's your personal decision. But what probably we can advise you is if your candidature is, of course, strong enough that you got into Harvard Medical School, do not be a bit hopeless about Fulbright. Maybe you get Fulbright too. I mean, you can always bring this up in the interview that you've already gotten into Harvard and that you have deferred your candidature. I'm not sure if that increases your chances of getting a Fulbright, but definitely it's something worth to be mentioning in the interview. That being said, I think you should really consider deferral for 1 more year and see if Fulbright happens for you. It can save you at least like $80,000 and also grant you more time for preparing your additional funding applications that your placement officer will advise you upon. So, sometime in February, you should hear back from your placement officer if you're selected with all the possible funding, additional funding options, and hopefully they will direct you to those options as well. So, let's say if 2 years down the line, if 1 year down the line, you let's say do not get Fulbright or any of these additional fundings, then probably loan is always an option that you can go back to, provided your Harvard agrees for a deferral. I hope that answers.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, thank you.
Just on that point, I agree with the advice that Taha has given, but I also want to stress that your future work plans are something to take into consideration to even decide if Fulbright is right for you. Because remember, the condition of the J1 visa is that you have to come back for 2 years. So if your plan involves trying to seek employment in the US immediately after the master's, this Fulbright scholarship is not for you. There are other scholarships, and I'm sure our project EduAccess has had workshops and the other available ones. So this is something to consider. And I believe there's limited way to get work experience. So when you're on the Fulbright J1 visa, you can still do the optional placement training and for a few months, I think, but that's not full-time employment. That's not like you have to come back to India. So do not plan finances or the decision to apply for the Fulbright scholarship around the prospect of working in the US. That's not a given. Then on that, I think again, like Taha said, and I'm also going to repeat that caveat, it's a very personal decision. Um, but do not take the decision to incur massive debt very lightly. So fully exhaust scholarship avenues before you take that on. That's just what I would do. It's really
Yeah.
completely dependent on personal circumstances. And so I think that would just be a slight caveat I would add.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Chintan,
Yeah, hi, thank you. Am I audible?
Yep,
Thank
we can hear you.
thank you. So, I question one is basically we just have like maybe 17 to 18 days left for the deadline for this year. So, for somebody trying to do this from scratch, like literally, build an application from scratch, how realistically possible is it? Also, with a full-time job and other responsibilities, how possible is this? Should it be tried? Allied question. In the application requirements, some of the bottlenecks that I see is like um, it's this is the whole idea of transcripts. In Indian universities, I have a bachelor's and a full-time master's. I have got mark sheets and degree certificates. So is that all right, or I need to go back to my university and ask them for some transcripts which are in a different format? Just to, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Who wants to take that question?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's again a personal decision. I think the only thing to be thinking about, are your referees going to be able to submit their references on time? And are you going to get your employer's endorsement if applicable? So these are the external constraining factors. In terms of whether you can craft an application, there's no harm in trying. It may not be as strong as, let's say, if you've, workshopped it, but gotten feedback on from others. But if you can meet the other document requirements, why not give it a shot? It doesn't work, then you'll try again next time and you would have experience. And this is just the start of the cycle, right? Fulbright is the earliest. You have other scholarships also coming up. In terms of the actual document, well, if I remember, I just scan my degree and transcript. I'm not sure. Taha,
Yeah.
do you remember if you need to get it endorsed or?
I don't think so. I think, and for one, I mean, you don't need to worry about those things at this stage. Probably that's what I want to stress. That comes at a much later stage. Are you expected to upload the documents at this stage? I don't think so, right?
Yes, on the
Okay.
checklist, it
Okay.
says
Okay.
uh,
Fair enough. Fair enough. So even if you are,
transcripts.
fair
Yeah.
enough, fair enough. So I would just think about the simple mark sheets. In India also they give us transcripts. A transcript essentially refers to one-page document that has your different semesters and a detail of all the courses that you have read and the grades that you got. It's basically one collective mark sheet that I believe all Indian universities provide you. I think you already have it, I believe. Um, so that's what you need to be uploading at this stage. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just want to make things clear. I was actually I had the same question, but I figured out that the application says mark sheets or transcripts. So which means we can either upload the mark sheet or the transcripts.
Yeah. Thank you, Ujwala, for that. Thank you. And we also need to remember what they are basically looking for at this point is a validation of your marks. Uh, and it should not be a massive concern at this point. Should there be any document shortfall, they will always get back to you and say, hey, this is what we need from you.
Yeah, I think it's just a difference in
Yeah.
terminology. Don't worry about it. Just upload what you have.
okay. Aparajita,
Yes, hi. Um, so my question is about the writing sample. I wanted to know what is an appropriate length for the writing sample, and if you all submitted one that was close to your field or your profile, or would they like some variety?
Hmm. So I don't think there is an appropriate number unless specified.
The upper
If
limit
you
is 20 pages.
Yeah, so if there is an upper limit, probably just understand. Do they have some specific font requirements, Prajita, for this year?
No, no, it's very loose. It just says an
Right.
upper limit of 20 pages.
That's fine.
And
That's fine. That's fine. If it's loose, it means the standard Times New Roman, font size 12, spacing 1.15 or 1.5.
Mhm.
Uh, and that would mean probably an essay of around 3,000 words should be enough, I would say.
Okay, an
Without
essay of
Yeah,
okay,
3,000 words seems decent, without any, additional photographs or graphics and the captions of those graphics. That should be enough. That's number one. And when I
right.
say 3,000 words, I also mean without the references at the end. So with references, even if you touch like 4,000 words, don't worry about it. That's number
Got it.
one. And in my case, I submitted writing samples that were related to my relevant course of study.
Okay.
But they were not spectacular, they were not hardcore academic writing pieces.
Yeah,
What
that's
they,
my
yeah,
concern. Go on.
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. As I said earlier, just worry about the language and the tonality of your paper. We have a tendency as beginners, as I said before, we have a tendency of romanticizing and writing poetry sometimes in our academic papers. Just worry about those adjectives that are a kill. Uh, just check it if it's academic. That's it. How intellectually accomplished you get in the paper, don't worry about that. They are not judging you on that. They really want to see, are you able to write? That's what they're looking for. Don't worry about how significant is this contribution, if that makes sense.
Yes, just building on that. So I have an LOR coming in from a professor who runs an organization, and I was playing with the idea. See, I'm also like the one thing that I haven't worked on is the writing sample, and I was toying with the idea of doing a profile on what he does, not really who he is, but what he does, and that kind of is relevant to my field. So would that be considered psychophantic, or you know, because he's writing my LOR as well?
I understand, and if I understand you correctly, if it's profiling that you're trying to do as submission of your writing sample, uh, are you by any chance going to journalism of what field?
No, I'm applying for education, and the angle that I'm trying to develop is the need for arts education in India, as in
Well,
performing arts, expressive arts, and how collectives like that do not really exist, and I want to build something like that. So we already
yeah,
have done work in the field, and my professor runs a theater collective, and he's also an educator, so he's the perfect
yeah,
intersection between the two things that I want to talk about.
yeah,
And I want to talk
yeah.
about how this India is a dying sort of a sector. Like, not a lot of people even pursue art degrees anymore because there's just so much dearth of opportunities. So
Yeah,
I mean, I want to do a profile on what he's doing and the need for such spaces, and
yeah.
how they are rapidly fizzling out. So it's a very detached angle from me and I mean, he as a person, but I would still be a little wary of repetition, right? So what would you
I get you.
suggest?
I get you. I get you. My short and quick response to that would be, uh, probably do not directly profile him and his work. A good idea would be to write about the umbrella term of, let's say art education in a changing landscape of India or whatever, or write about arts education in the global south, if you will, write about arts education in South Asia. Use that umbrella term, umbrella argument, and then in the abstract itself you can say, to explain and elucidate my point, we will be critically examine a case study from India and then dive into case study. So case study would mean 60% of your writing. 20% in the start would be a general overarching commentary, and 20% of the conclusion would be what learnings does this person's work as a case study grant to you as a potential learner, and what are these learnings that you can superimpose on the collective whole of the problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That really helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is it. We don't have any more hands raised, and I think most of the questions that were in chat have been answered in
Hey,
chat.
Mirza. Sorry to interject. I have a question.
Sure.
Musab,
Hi, Taha. This
get
is
ready.
Musa from Intercycle.
But
Go ahead, Musab.
sorry, Ms. Yeah.
Yeah, Taha. So my question is about the preferences of the universities that you give at the inception of your application. The reason I'm asking is because I'm in the process of trying to up the score of my GMAT, right? So that would, in effect, if I get a 700 plus score, I can aspire for Ivy League or similar sort of institutions. So in future, if I sort of get the score above 700, would I be able to sort of update the preferences of the universities?
Rupa, would you like to take that?
Yeah,